What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and another Outriders video. When it comes to triple turret techno, there's really two ways in which I build this. One of them being leaning heavily into techmonger and the set specifically empowering every time that you throw a turret out and then dealing more damage. And then the other way basically leaning into Borealis techno and then getting the additional damage to frozen that comes from that set. Now today we're going to look at the Borealis version because the previous video that I released on this, which was a couple of days after Worldslayer launched, had a bunch of dead mods on it and wasn't what I would consider the final version of this build. Now that I've had some time to do some more farming, I've gotten higher gear, higher in the apocalypse level, so I was able to get better pieces. I think I can now finally release the complete edition of this and basically how I would play this Borealis triple turret techno. Now both of these versions, whether you are playing the techmonger version or the Borealis version, were affected by the latest balance patch, specifically the changes made to no resistance and the changes made to lethal devices. Does it mean that these builds aren't viable anymore? Not at all. They absolutely still work. They just obviously don't shred as much as they used to. And you can't get these really insane, 7-second, 10-second, 11-second boss kills that we used to back in the day, because of course Mage's Rage has also changed. Nonetheless, using almost the same mods and just maybe leaning a little bit more into additional AP or additional percentage based damage mods, we are still able to get a really decent damage profile for this. And the build is by no means dead. It is still one of the smartest and best choices you can make when you play Technomancer, and more specifically when you want to play Technomancer in a completely non-sweaty way, aka not playing firepower blighted rounds Technomancer, for example. Now personally for me, I prefer the techmonger version of this build, which is why I'm leaving the refresh for that for last, leaving the best and the most fun for last. However, this version of the build, the Borealis version of this build, still works really well and is able to actually deal, I would imagine, a little bit more damage than the techmonger version, simply due to the fact that you have all this additional damage to targets that are frozen. That being said, either version is fully capable of carrying people in expeditions, doing expeditions quite fast, and also extremely comfortably farming the second arbiter or any boss in this game for that matter, without fear of dying or any of those kinds of issues. That in itself makes this build still one of the better ones to use, just due to the fact that there's almost no risk factor in fighting enemies due to the sheer amount of damage that your turrets are pushing out, and then consequently that damage translating into life for you. So when it comes to the actual build itself, I like running around with pistols out, and I have a Torment in Agony with Fortress and Mage's Rage on, which gives me a great way to actually ramp up on enemies and empower my turrets to do a little bit more damage. Now I do have a Moaning Winds recycle weapon here as well in the shape of the guillotine, which allows me to use Radiation Splash, Moaning Winds and Clip Combustion on one weapon and get that massive big reload damage roll that you can get from that for any sticky enemies and things that aren't basically dying to the turrets or any of the other things that you're throwing at it. Now of course another example of a good weapon would be something like this Final Penance with Mage's Rage, Anomaly Enhancement and Fortress on. It's kind of like the same thing. The point is just that you need something to just be able to ramp up your turret's damage a little bit, so any combination of Fortress and Mage's Rage is good. The reason why I also like the Torment in Agony is because it has Armor Pierce on it, which feeds into our whole no resistance mod combination, and it has status power on it as well, and both of these stats are very important for us, especially given the mod combination that we've decided to go with this build. And when it comes to the actual armor, as mentioned, forgive my transmog here, but we are using 3-piece Borealis, which is actually the chest, the legs and the gloves. But specifically starting us off with the headpiece first, this is actually a techmonger mask. What you're looking for is anomaly power on all of your gear, followed by status power is really good as well, and then of course cooldown reduction, because that actually helps you to bring down your cold snap cooldown reduction, which means you can actually get that out more often. The more often you can cast cold snap means the more often you can abuse Icicle Storm, which comes on the chest of the Borealis, and that allows you to deal massive AoE damage to the enemies that your turrets are shooting. Quite often what's happening is you'll throw your turrets out, you'll cold snap, it'll freeze a whole bunch of enemies around your turrets will shoot one or two of those enemies, and it'll start this cascading explosion effect and basically killing everything, which is just amazing. So Double Trouble on here is our first mod that we get for cryo turrets, which gives cryo turrets 2 barrels instead of 1. 2 barrels means double the fun and double the shooting, so it's definitely good to have that. Next we have Virulent Compound on here, which is a mini Captain Hunter, or Captain Hunter Light if you put it that way. As always, trash is never a problem for any of these builds, but you do have to have a way that you can deal more damage against captains, elites, and bosses, and absolutely Virulent Compound helps out here. Also, if you actually manage to kill enemies that have, or rather elites that have this debuff on them, it'll explode, cause a small amount of damage, but also spread this effect around, which is phenomenal. We have Euthanizer on here as well, because the two main statuses that we are going to be applying constantly is we're going to be applying Toxic to things, and we're going to be applying Freeze to things. So additional damage to either one of those two is a good thing for us, and we absolutely want that. Then on the chest piece, as mentioned, we have Icicle Storm, which is the famous mod that basically allows, you know, this chain reaction of explosions to happen once you freeze things with Cold Snap. So absolutely very useful there. We have Hail Shot on here, and this is the reason why we stack so much status power, because this actually increases our cryo turrets damage based on our status power. So more status power, more damage per shot for those turrets. We have no resistance against the Fortified here, which took a hit from the patch that came out last week, but basically this allows us to cycle some of our armor piercing into resistance piercing, and then consequently with another mod we're going to cycle that into additional AP. So when we get over to the pants, and maybe now's a good time to just discuss the bonus that we get from Borealis. So Borealis of course says that it increases our damage against frozen enemies by 50%. Also, critical hit damage is increased by 10% for all party members for 8 seconds after Cold Snap usage. Now, this is the other reason why Cold Snap is so good for us, because the minute we Cold Snap a bunch of enemies, our turrets are going to deal so much more damage against them, as will we. Now, Unstoppable Force on here is the combo to what I just mentioned with no resistance against the Fortified. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to change 50%, or it's going to allow us to increase our anomaly power by 50% of our resistance piercing. So this is again why it's important for us to keep a weapon in our hands that has armor piercing, because that armor piercing cycles into resistance piercing, and that resistance piercing cycles into additional AP. So then we have Freezing Boost on here, again just because we want to be dealing additional damage to enemies that are either toxic and frozen, or basically, you know, both of those statuses, so it's good. We have Improved Coolant on here, which is another mod for Cryo Turret that came with Worldslayer, which is really good. This doubles the fire rate of the deployed turret. So now we have turrets with double the barrels and double the fire rate, which is like quadruple the fun. So good times. Then when we get over to the gloves themselves, we have Shatter on here, which gives us more damage once again against frozen targets or freeze. We also have Twins on here because we do want to be able to throw out 2 of these cryo turrets. So you can see there's a whole bunch of doubling going on. 2 turrets, double the barrels, double the fire rate, double, and so on and so forth. We have Power Assimilation on here as well, which is just going to increase our AP profile with more elites on the field. So if there are 2 captains, 2 elites, or something like that on the field, we actually get this effect times 2, and this is additional anomaly power for us, which makes our turrets deal that much more damage. Then last but not least, we have our pants, where we have Anomaly Echo, which is just again some additional anomaly power for us whenever we activate a skill, and we're constantly throwing out our turrets, and we're also cold snapping on cooldown, so most of the time this effect is going to be on the entire time. We have Captain Hunter on here because we do want to be able to deal as much damage as possible against elites, captains, and bosses, and that absolutely helps with that. And then we have Toxic Piercer, which if I recall correctly, I was not able to fit onto the build last time, but now we actually have it on here. And again, because we are stacking so much resistance piercing, we can now see that the effectiveness of Toxic is increased by 51%, and that bonus is equal to 100% of my resistance piercing. So this is fantastic. This means that when enemies actually have Toxic on them, and that Toxic is ticking on them, that's actually going to make it deal that much more damage. Now, when we get over to the skills themselves and the rotation, it's fairly simple. You basically play this as if you're playing a tower defense game. So as you move from area to area, you throw out your 2 cryo turrets, you throw out your blighted turret, and you start using cold snap as soon as the enemies are nice and clustered up together, so that you can blow them up with AoE. That's basically it. Due to the fact that Cold Snap's cooldown is so low and is sitting at 11 seconds, and also your Blighted Turret and Cryo Turret cooldowns are that low, you can essentially move your little turret base camp around the entire time. But this is where this build is slightly different to the Techmonger build. The The technomancer build rewards you with active replacement of your turrets, whereas with the Borealis you kind of have to unlearn that muscle memory, and this has been a big adaptation for me, that it's better to actually just leave your turrets out for a while, because of course when you do throw these turrets out, they take a while to actually reacquire a target. Sometimes they'll end up shooting something new and not finishing off the enemy that they were shooting at. So it is a good idea to rather leave them as undisturbed as you can and refresh them at, I would say, the latest possible, time. When we get to the technomancer set in a couple of days from now, that will be a different discussion, because there it is actually encouraged for you to refresh the turrets more often than not. Then when we get over to the class tree itself, you absolutely want to end up a tech shaman, but the best way to get there is to go bottom and try to pick up as much anomaly power as you can. Anomaly power was buffed with the latest patch, so this is of course a good thing. So we do want to go down here. We want to get some more resistance piercing, because again, that is just such a really important stat for us. It affects so many things. We get some more anomaly power up until the point where we get to anomaly field here, and we can jump down and we can get adrenalizing antenna. And what this does is it means that every time when you throw your blighted turret out, you get a nice 30% increase to anomaly power for 10 seconds, which is great, which is also just going to drive up all your damage on your turrets again. Now I get one more point in here to make toxic last a little bit longer on enemies, 30%, and then we dip up and we get wipeout. We get to the top here, we quickly go to the left, we get enemies afflicted with freeze receive 10% more damage, because oftentimes stuff is going to be locked down with cold snap, so we want to do as much as possible damage to them. We do get ourselves a little bit of cooldown reduction here. We go ahead and we get exposing frost and its sister node marked for execution, which means that when we freeze things, we make them vulnerable, and then that vulnerable is also 40% more effective. Then we just keep on going down here. This is just allowing us to keep stuff frozen for longer, and we settle on Doctor of Medicine, which increases all healing by 20% for you and your allies. Now again, like I said, I can't really recall if I've ever died while playing this build. Certainly maybe if I was being really stupid and stood in anomaly blades while 15 guys were hitting me with fucking mallets, and guys were shooting me with lasers, and 17 riflemen were sniping me, maybe, but still I think you could have probably healed through that, because you are pushing so much damage out. As long as your turrets are out, you are basically, I would say, invulnerable. Now we do get fracture here as well, and then the big one of course is overclock. Overclock does two things for us. First of all, it gives us a phoenix like effect, which means that we can actually come back from death once at least. And then also whenever we activate gadget skills, we get an anomaly power and weapon damage increase of 40% for 10 seconds. Now our gadget skills are our cryo turrets, and it's also cold snap. So generally speaking, and because this is on a 10-second cooldown, you'll probably have this build up at, this buff rather, up at all times, maybe having 1 or 2 seconds down somewhere around the middle of the fight or something like that, as you are switching between cold snap and your cryo turrets. But generally speaking, you will always have this increase, and that's another reason why this build just overall has decent damage. Now when we get to the PAX tree itself, of course we are gonna want to be going top tree, and we will want to be making my face disappear so I can quickly do the explanation here. We will want to be picking up Initial Striker, which says that activating skills increases our anomaly power or firepower for 5 seconds, depending on which one of them is higher. Our anomaly power is going to be higher because we are trying to stack that, so we should be able to see that increase there. Then when it comes to lethal devices, this is the part where the patch changed quite a bit by introducing this small little cooldown to how often the effect can be triggered. And even though the cooldown is extremely small, only a couple of 0 seconds, the problem is that this has actually produced quite a big effect, and it's quite noticeable if you compare pre-lethal devices and post-lethal devices. So it has hit us a bit in the damage, but nonetheless this is still really good, and this means that your ordnance and gadget skills inflict toxic to enemies hit and deal additional 5% of anomaly damage as damage if toxic was refreshed. So every time when we cold snap, we actually apply toxic as well, and every time when our cryo turrets shoot enemies with ice damage, they actually apply toxic as well. So then we go over to painkiller. This says damaging an enemy grants you 2% health regeneration for 3 seconds. This can stack twice, so you can get up to 4%, which is another way how you're basically just maintaining your life and staying alive. Then we have permanence on here, which says that whenever you inflict toxic on an enemy, you also have a 100% chance to inflict another random status. So this means as you are here as you are here, like if when you cold snap, that freezes something and that gives it toxic. Then because of that, because of permanence, it gets another status on it again as well. And then dissection here says that you deal 5% more damage to enemies for every status afflicted on them. So the more statuses you stack on enemies, the more damage your turrets and overall you are going to deal to those enemies. Then let's just talk about Ascension Points quickly. So again, with Ascension Points, because the majority of your damage is going to be coming from your turrets and it's going to be coming from, you know, anomaly as a source, you want to be stacking your anomaly power as high as you can and everything associated with that. So absolutely your first 10 points goes into anomaly damage. You give yourself some points into status, because again, that also increases your damage and actually makes your freezes last longer. For example, you pick yourself up some resistance piercing, some armor piercing, additionally some anomaly power over here. You can get yourself some additional survivability on this side here. You can get yourself less damage from elites. You can get yourself more damage to elites, and of course absolutely pick yourself up some additional cooldown reduction as well, because cold snap is life and you want to have as much access to that skill as possible. And that right there gets us to the end of the video and also the end of the build. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Like I said, I will be bringing out the other version of TURRET Techno, which I have taken to calling Beermonger. So we will have Beermonger version 2.0 with some updates to some of the mods that I had in there, which I think now makes the build a little bit more consistent, makes it deal a little bit more damage, which is of course what we want, since we lost some of that with the changes that came with the patch. Let me know if you prefer the Borealis version or if you like the Techmonger version. Maybe you even played the Flame Leopard version. So let me know what changes you would make to this build, how you would move the mods around, what you would add, what you would take away. And also let me know what else you are looking for the Technomancer. I think I have 2 or 3 more Technomancer builds coming on. I need to check my roster. They'll be out, I would say, in the next week to week and a half, as I just sort of finish up farming up some of the additional dust that I need and everything like that to level him up. Some of them are not high enough level to my actual character level yet, and that's obviously what's slowing me down as I'm just trying to get those materials. But again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It is just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.